what do people think about lawyers? And I saw greedy and unethical. Imagine that. And that's not me. That's not the lawyers at PJI. And so getting back, let me tell you why we need good lawyers. So here's a real life example. A Christian mother is trying to raise her daughter with moral values and a biblical worldview. This daughter goes to school and tells her friend, I think I'm a boy. The friend tells the school counselor she thinks she's a boy. The mother is confronted now with deciding on whether or not she's going to affirm a lie, treat her daughter like she's not a girl, deny who God made her to be, or risk having Child Protective Services or some similar agency remove the kid from her custody. So the mother decided she was not going to affirm a lie. She was not going to treat her daughter like she is a boy. And the daughter was removed from the custody of her mother's home.
Was that local or was that state, or you don't know?
This is in the state of California, but these stories are echoed all throughout the country. And so PJI stepped in. We represented the mother in a hard-fought battle, and we won. And the daughter was brought back into the custody of the mother's home. And so I share this because this is why we need good lawyers. We need lawyers fighting for people like this mother. And that's the type of lawyer we strive to be at PJI. And so instead of greedy and unethical, I would say godly and upstanding. Yeah. That's what we are. And so at PJI, we help the helpless. We are a voice of authority in the court system, advocating zealously for our clients. We fight for those whose rights are being infringed upon and who don't have the resources to fight back. And so by God's grace, we stand on principles of truth and law, and we have had a very, very, very successful win rate. All right, in fact, I am going to, and just a little bit about me, I'm a lifelong Marylander. I have been raised and worked in the Baltimore County area for all of my life. And I serve all parts of Maryland, all 23 counties, Baltimore City, and I also help with cases on the West Coast. And in fact, PJI started on the West Coast. This is our mission here. We started on the West Coast, but now we have expanded to 36 offices in 29 states. Prior to the start of the pandemic in 2022, we only had 6 or 8 offices. Our footprint is rapidly expanding because the need is great, and then more people are learning about what we do, which is one of the purposes of this presentation. There's a lot of people who need help and don't know where to turn. Plus, lawyers are cost prohibitive. People just can't afford to pay them, no matter how great the need is. So we do all our work free of charge, and we are happy to help. Oh, what makes us unique? There are other organizations of our kind that are in the country, but we do not cherry pick our cases. We don't aim for the high profile cases. We have high profile cases, but one of our mantras is that we try not to have anyone left on the side of the road. So we take cases other people won't take, and I'll talk about one of them. And 2 questions we ask: what are people's needs and how can we serve them? So it's a blessing to be at this job because I not only get to help people fight their legal battles, it really does feel like a calling in the ministry to help them in other ways as well. All right, so here is a small sampling of some of the cases that we have. Like I said before, we're protecting parental rights, religious freedoms, for churches and ministries. And the First Amendment protects 5 things, right? It protects the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and the freedom to petition your government for redress of grievances. So oftentimes, the freedom of religion and the freedom of speech, they are interrelated because people have a right to religious expression in what they say and what they distribute. And so we find ourselves fighting for people and filing lawsuits with those claims in tandem. Freedom of religion and freedom of speech coupled together. All right, so on this slide, you're gonna see some snapshots of what we do. At the top, there's a case in Montana that we have, and we are defending parents after CPS removed their daughter due to gender transition objections. On the left-hand side, we are helping a church and a ministry who was assessed $310,000 unlawfully in fines for feeding the homeless community. And then one other one that I will highlight that's kind of tucked there in the lower right corner is a BART case. BART is the Bay Area Rapid Transit System in San Francisco. And when I said we take cases some people don't want to take, is these COVID vaccine mandate cases. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but a lot of people were faced with mandatory vaccination policies during the height of COVID. And so basically, they were told you have to take the vaccine or else you're going to lose your job. Some of these folks were remote workers. They never set foot in the office, but they were subject to these policies. And so I don't express an opinion either way on the vaccine, but under the law, under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, people have religious rights. And if you have a religious objection to workplace requirements, you can request a reasonable accommodation, and one can be granted to you if it doesn't cause undue hardship. And so under the law, people had a right to request religious exemptions. So with this BART case, and it was hard fought. It was in San Francisco, which is not the most friendly territory, but we represented multiple plaintiffs. We were able to settle with most of them, but 6 plaintiffs said, no, we want our day in court. We're going to trial. And so there was a jury trial, and collectively, we were able to get a jury verdict of $7.8 million for the 6 plaintiffs. Oh, I also want to point out, since we're talking about the COVID vaccine, so during the height of the pandemic in California, and actually across the country, churches were shut down. So there were 5 churches that PJI defended that did not want to close their doors. So we took it all the way to the Supreme Court, actually, on an emergency petition. And this was a shock. With 6-3, they ruled that Governor Gavin Newsom has to allow these churches to open. And so that was a very, very big win for us. Also, I just want to say the other types of cases, this is similar to the one that I started off with. Parents are losing their kids because they refuse to go along with gender transitioning. And so that's been something we've been fighting. And then foster parents have been denied licenses because they say they're not going to affirm the gender that's different from the biological sex, so they don't get to become foster parents. Although we need good foster parents. And so those are the types of cases that we're fighting. Okay, this next slide is some of what we've been able to get done. And I just want to give you a little bit of background before I go into some specific topics regarding parental rights and religious freedom, to let you know the type of organization we are. Because there's probably someone you know who could use the services that we provide. And so we are out there. I'm available. I service the state of Maryland. And so I would encourage everyone to contact us. We have some things we're going to pass out at the end if you want to follow up. All right, so Brad Dacus, the president and founder, he loves to talk to people and travel, and he does that all without charge as well. So he attended 80 seminars, reaching 20,000 people. That's just one person alone. He will talk to anybody who wants to hear how we can help. We also hold Zoom calls, and I would encourage you as well, if you are interested in protecting your parental rights, protecting your religious freedoms, you should go to our website, pji.org, and sign up for our newsletter. You will get email notifications of what we are doing and how you can stay informed. And so we hold Zoom calls, and we'll notify you in advance that will educate you on current events, current legal cases that affect you. And so we had 5 of them last year. And earlier this year, after a major court case, Mahmoud v. Taylor, that dealt with parental rights, some of you may be familiar with it, but I'll talk about it just a little bit. We had a Zoom call on that as well, to let people know how this new ruling, strengthening parental rights, would be able to help them. Also, attorneys do what I'm doing today. We attend events, we attend seminars to let people know what we're doing and how they can affect their rights, and we were able to reach 5,000 people last year. Okay, for some reason that's not coming up the way that was on the slide. So this is dealing with the 14th Amendment. You may ask, I know a lot of people ask, is parental rights a constitutional right? And yes, it is. It's derived from the 14th Amendment, which says, no state shall deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. So these are constitutional rights that should not be stripped away by any state, by any local government, or anyone else. And so I'm going to cite a few cases to let you know how entrenched or how integrated parental rights is to our liberties. So the United States Supreme Court said that the liberty interest of parents in the care, custody, and control of their children is perhaps the oldest of our fundamental liberty interests. The court also said no other right has been so vigorously protected by our nation's highest court. And then, in another case, Myers v. Nebraska, the court said that parents have a right to establish a home and bring up children and to control the education of their own. In another Supreme Court case, the court said that a child was not simply the creature of the state, and that the people who nurture the child and direct the child's destiny have the right and the high duty to recognize and prepare the child for additional obligations. You would think parents didn't have rights, the way public schools infringe upon those rights, but we do. And another court said that, and the Supreme Court at another point in time said, it is cardinal with us that the custody, care, and nurture of the child reside first in the parents, whose primary function and freedom include preparation for obligations the state can neither supply nor hinder. So parental rights is a fundamental right, it's a constitutional right, and it should not be taken away from any parent. And how can you talk about parental rights without talking about the public education system? So I just want to point out that in Maryland, on the top it should say total student population in Maryland. That's what happened here. So Maryland has over 1 million students who attend either public school, homeschool, or private school. Of that portion, 890,000 attend public schools. That's almost 86%. So most students are attending public schools, so it's important to know what's going on in the public schools. And there's a Supreme Court case that was decided in June of this year, Mama v. Taylor. Parents out of Montgomery County of different faiths were appalled that they were denied the right to opt their kids out of offensive material, storybooks that had sexual themes, other inappropriate things that little kids should not be taught in school as early as pre-K. And I remember following this 2 years ago when it was just a local matter. And then the parents filed a lawsuit against the Board of Education, against the superintendent, and they lost at the district court level. And so then they appealed it to the 4th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, and they lost. And then they appealed it to the United States Supreme Court. Now, it is not easy to get a writ of certiorari, which is what is called granted. The Supreme Court gets about 7,000 to 8,000 petitions of this kind every year. They only grant 80. That's like a 1% chance. But we made it. We got that 1%. And so, lo and behold, the Supreme Court sided with the parents. They said local schools have to provide notice of what they are going to teach your children. they have to give you the right to opt out. And this was huge because although in Maryland, you already have a right to opt your kids out of family life and human sexuality classes, there were efforts, very intense efforts, to integrate LGBTQ curriculum in other types of classes, like English class, which can't be opted out of, or language arts class, which can't be opted out of. So this new ruling by the Supreme Court says, any curriculum that substantially interferes with the religious upbringing of your child being taught in public schools, parents have the right to opt their kids out. And it's interesting that although this originated in Maryland, this is now federal law. This applies to every school district in every state in the country. And so it's just a great win for everybody. I also want to point out PJI, and we've done this for years, we have opt-out forms on our website for every state that allows an opt-out. And so, and we've customized it so that it conforms with the new Supreme Court decision. I would also encourage you, though, to check with your local school board, because Montgomery County has their own opt-out form. So it's not like a general one that you could use before and submit. And so in order for it to be effective, you need to find out if your school district has a specific one to use. And there even may be a time frame that you have to submit it, like within 10 days of the start of class. But I think there's a time frame for Montgomery County. But the great thing to know is it's available. This is a tool at your disposal. You don't have to have your kids subjected to material that you find offensive to your religious beliefs. Another thing that's important to know when you think about parental rights is something called the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, PPRA. This allows you to opt your kids out of surveys and questionnaires, asking them about their health, their personal beliefs, their behaviors, or that of their parents. And so this is an intrusive way for the school to find out what's going on and in the lives of families. And so you can opt your kids out, but they do not have to take these surveys, they do not have to take these questionnaires. Also, it's important to know that you can request school records. Now in Maryland and in a lot of other states, they don't have to disclose if your child has gender identity issues. And so they could have a different name for your child, using different pronouns, and they don't tell the parents. And so I know that's just horrible. And so your child could be suffering from gender dysphoria and you have no clue. So obviously that needs to change, and that's what we're fighting for. I do want to also say, sometimes you can feel powerless. Like, what do I do? But we have people in this room who are using their voice to run for office. And people can run for their school board. You know, you can be a voice on the school board. The school boards have a lot of influence. They affect curriculum, they affect policies, and so one thing PJI has started to do was to push, people to run for school board. And we have a Church Finds Its Voice initiative where we focus on that. And if I recall correctly, out of the maybe 48 or so people who we were assisting in that effort, I think over half of them were elected. Wow. So it makes a really big difference. I know earlier we mentioned turning points, and so we see so many seeds of revival and a change in this country morally cropping up, which is beautiful. There has been opposition, even actually for some time. And so it's important to know that Christian clubs, good news clubs, religious clubs should have a place in their schools just like secular clubs. There's something called the Equal Access Act. And so school administrators cannot deny and discriminate against people who want such clubs. And we encourage students to form these clubs and to make a difference in their schools. All right, I'm going to turn to religious freedom. Let's see here. All right, so we mentioned my movie Taylor. Already we mentioned this, the Public Protection of Rights Amendment. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. So a lot of people didn't know about Title VII of the Civil Rights Act during COVID, and it's important even now, because in the workplace, what seems to be a new frontier, a legal frontier for us, is potential clients who call and say, my employer adopted this new pronoun policy, and I have to use pronouns, these preferred pronouns of my coworkers, and I just can't do that because I can't say that you're a man if you're a woman. And what's always been interesting to me is the they them pronouns, but people have to hold to you have to hold to your religious convictions, you have to hold to your convictions. And so we've been getting calls about that. And so under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, you cannot be discriminated against because of your religion. And that the definition of religion is very broad. It can include non-traditional beliefs. Now, what we have seen in the COVID vaccine context, which is where we have most used Title VII, because there were thousands of people calling us, and after this BART verdict of $7.8 million, there were even more people calling us. And I guess this would be a good time for me to say that when you need legal help, it's not best to wait, because there are statute of limitations, there are time limits on when you can file a complaint, when you can file a lawsuit. And so under Title VII, you have only 180 days to file a complaint. 180 days from the time of the act that infringed upon your rights, to file a complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Now, if your state has an equivalent state agency, which Maryland does, then you have 300 days. So Maryland has the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. So in under a year, if you don't file a lawsuit, you lose your rights. You lose your rights to compensation or remedy. And so I would encourage people, like, if you don't know if you need legal help, it's just best to call and ask. And that's why PGI is so important. You're going to get a competent attorney who knows the law, who can provide resources, and it's without charge. And so under Title VII, yes, you can't be discriminated against because of your religious freedoms. If you are faced with a workplace requirement that goes against your religious convictions, one of the first things you should do is ask for a religious accommodation. People didn't know they could do that. You go to your employer, you say, I want to be exempted from this workplace requirement because it offends my religious beliefs. Now, the employer is supposed to engage in an interactive process. So they shouldn't just blanketly say no. That's what we've seen. Employers don't understand what the Holy Spirit means, or they don't agree with other things, and it doesn't line up with their theology, and they just dismiss it as an insincere religious belief, and they deny you an accommodation. But that's not how it's supposed to work. To find out more information, and then see if they can reasonably accommodate you. With these vaccine cases, some of the employees were only going into the office once a day. So in that case, what would be the reasonable accommodation? Well, I have a coworker who's willing to do that for me. Or like some of my cases, I would go in, some of them were managers. They would go into the office after office hours. When no one was there, they would mask, they would follow all safety protocols. So the first option is not to terminate the employee, which was the first option for a lot of employers. The first option under Title VII is to see if we can accommodate you. And that is what was lacking, and that's why we were contacted. I was even contacted by the mother of a student who had applied to a university here in Maryland. And she had gotten in as a nursing student. But with nursing students, they have clinicals that they have to complete with hospitals. So for a lot of nursing students across the country, they were admitted to schools, but they didn't want to take the vaccine, so they were in danger of not being able to complete their education. And so with this particular student, she contacted me like 3 days before the deadline. So of course I worked over the weekend to get this done. And so our first option is not to file a lawsuit. It's to write a demand letter. It's to lay out the law, and that's what we did. We sent a letter to the general counsel of the university, and we sent it to the School of Nursing administrator, and this was a private university actually, so Title VII only applies to private employers, so we had to use a little creativity, but the law was still on our side, and so we were able to get her an exemption. And so she was able to, instead of having to sit out for a whole year now, because she would not have been eligible to complete her schooling because she did not want to take the vaccine, she was able to attend school. She's on her 3rd year now, about to graduate from the School of Nursing, and that's what we try to do. That's the difference we try to make. We try to step in, help people who can't help themselves, and it makes such a difference. I also want to point out that we are very, very focused on trying to help on the legislative side. What do you do when you have bad laws on the books? And let's see here. Okay, I don't see that one. You stand up and you use your voice. And PGI is very, 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 very focused on making our voices heard. I've testified numerous times in Annapolis on some very important bills. One of which is to save women's sports. Biological men should not be allowed to participate in sports with biological women. And that is just common sense. And it's common sense for so many reasons. It's the safety of the girls who they're playing with, that we have to protect them. It's their privacy in the locker rooms. They shouldn't be, exposed to men. The way that, the locker room is situated, and also it takes opportunities away from women. Title IX was instituted for a reason, and we rolled back all the benefits of Title IX when we allow men to have an unfair competitive advantage, which is what happens when biological men are able to compete with biological women in sports. Another bill that PGI was focused on is having chaplains, voluntary chaplains in public schools to assist with guidance counselors. We found out nationwide that having chaplains as another resource, it helps prevent teen pregnancies, it helps lower the suicide rate. There's so many benefits. And obviously in Maryland, it's not easy to have these bills passed. But we never back down. We just keep pressing and fighting and strategizing, unlike you all are doing so wonderfully here. So we have a legislative council and a Center for Public Policy. We have attorneys testifying all across the country to get good laws passed and bad laws taken away. And I'm just going to wrap up here with a few other things. And I apologize for the format there.
That's my fault.
Oh, okay. It's okay. I just want to let you know we believe in excellence here. So all right. So, and technology, sometimes it just acts up a little bit.
Okay.
So we have kiosks. This is a new initiative. This is a new initiative that we just started this year. We want to have a kiosk in every church who wants a kiosk. And so why is this important? We will have pamphlets and information on these topics and other topics that people can just walk up to and take. You don't have to call a lawyer. You will have it on you. You can review it when you want, and we are so excited about that. And then the last thing I would just mention, a couple last things, you can connect with PJI in a number of ways here. You can join our Zoom. You can request free materials. You can partner with us. We have a prayer warrior group if you want to pray for our cases. We could use some prayer. And you can partner with us. So we would love to have you all join us, help us. Call me, please, if you need help. call early and call late too. It's better to call than not to call. So if we can help you, we'll try to help you. So I'm just so happy to be able to share this with you all, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. And now we have some time for a few questions. We're running a little bit late. If you guys don't mind, is that okay?